Hello everyone, my name is Dinh Thi Mai Anh from Foreign Languages Department, Vinh University. Today it's my great honor to represent our research team, including three members, Dr. Nguyen Thi Kim Anh, the Dean of our Foreign Languages Department, Vinh University, Ms. Nguyen Van Anh, also from the same department as well, and me to present our study at Viet Thi So International Convention 2021. The aim of the study is to explore further how similar and different the domain COVID-19 are conceptualized, and its findings will contribute to strengthen the theory of cognitive linguistics and benefit foreign language learning and teaching and translation as well. Well, in our research, there are four main parts. The first part includes the theoretical background and literature review of this study. And in the second part, I will explain the research methodology we use to carry out this research. In part 3, will be about findings and discussions. And the last one will provide some implications for teaching, learning, and translating cognitive metaphors in English and in Vietnamese. It also presents suggestions for further research. Well, at first, I would like to discuss a little bit detail about metaphor. Metaphor is seen to pervade all languages and communication. In fact, native speakers use metaphor automatically and without effort, often without noticing, which leaves second language learners at risk of misunderstandings. Therefore, a large amount of research has been carried out in the world in general and in Vietnam in particular, with the aim to find out similarities and differences in the use of metaphor, which brings great benefits to the English teaching, learning, and translating process. So let us begin with Aristotle, which is considered as the father of metaphor theory. Metaphor was considered as a conscious and deliberate use of words, and only great poets and speakers uh, who must have special talents such as Shakespeare and Churchill could be its masters. As a result, a metaphor in the traditional view was not an invisible part of everyday human communication, merely in literature. However, in the cognitive linguistic view, metaphor is defined as understanding one conceptual domain in terms of another conceptual domain. In other words, it can be understood that conceptual domain A is conceptual domain B, which is called a conceptual metaphor. For example, we have one conceptual metaphor, life is a journey, in which life is conceptual domain A and a journey is conceptual domain B. People use the expressions of a journey in order to comprehend the abstract and complex concept of life. The two domains of a conceptual metaphor also have distinctive names. The conceptual domain for which we draw metaphorical expressions to understand another conceptual domain is called source domain. Why? The conceptual domain that is understood this way is the target domain. In other words, conceptual metaphors typically employ a more abstract concept as target and a more concrete or physical concept as their resource. Lakoff and Johnson, in their work in 1980, introduced three kinds of conceptual metaphor according to the cognitive functions that they perform. The first one is structural metaphors. The second one is ontological metaphors. And the last one is the orientational metaphors. And here on the screen right now is the detailed explanation of different types of metaphors. You can take time to read that. And now let's go to the part literature review. The beginnings of cognitive linguistics lie around 1975, which is the year when Lakoff appeared to have used the term cognitive linguistics for the first time. At this period of time, Lakoff realized that figures of speech such as metaphor, metonymy was not just linguistic decorations, but a part of everyday speech that affects the way in which we perceive, think, and act. They began hit collaboration with the philosopher Mark Johnson in 1979, and they published their first seminal book, Metaphors We Live By, in 1980, which were the first publication to bring cognitive linguistics to the attention of a wider audience. In this work, Lakoff and Johnson present their strong arguments against the traditional view of metaphor and introduce a new one that challenged all the aspects of this widely shared theory in a coherent and a systematic way. They also introduced the notion of conceptual metaphor and illustrates their viewpoint with a huge number of linguistic examples. This work is the main theoretical background and guideline for our research. Since then, a considerable number of researches have been carried out in the line of cognitive linguistics in the world and in Vietnam as well. These reasons aim to answer two main questions. The first one is how the metaphor COVID-19 is a word manifested in English and Vietnamese. And the second question is, what are the implications for the use of this conceptual metaphor in teaching, learning, and translating? In this research, both the quantitative and qualitative method are used in the process of analyzing the collected data. Contrastive and comparative analysis are utilized with the aim to find out the similarities and differences in the use of linguistic expressions manifested from the conceptual metaphor COVID-19 as a word in English and Vietnamese. For the data collection, identifying word terms is the first step of this research. Word terms refer to the words or expressions used in military situations such as battle, attack, bombard, strategy, fight, defeat, campaign, battle, win, victory, and the example sentences in this study are selected from articles into prestigious Vietnamese and English newspaper during the first half of 2021. Here is the table consisting of the most frequently used metaphorical expressions denoting conceptual metaphor COVID-19 is a war in English. As you can see on the screen right now, the metaphorical expression fighting seem to be the most popular one compared to other expressions. And for Vietnamese data, chiến đấu or fighting, also one of the most frequently used metaphorical expressions found in Vietnamese corpus. And in pupils' mind right now, both in English and also Vietnamese, they always consider curing COVID-19 as fighting a war. And you can find in some specific example on the screen right now. For example, like there is no doubt that in fighting the old variant of the virus, our collective efforts were working and would have continued to work. They keep mentioning about like fighting COVID-19, fight the virus, fight against the rapidly pandemic, or fight the COVID-19 here at home. In the fight against coronavirus, continue fight back from the pandemic or huge crisis in antivirus fight. Here are some examples to prove that in people's mind right now, they understand the fight with COVID-19 is like fighting a war, and they need to try really hard to fight back the coronavirus or firework. Here are some more examples. For example, like fighting global health crisis, global fight against COVID-19, the global fight against COVID and prolong the pandemic, fighting this virus to fight the virus, fighting a very big battle against COVID-19, or everyone is fighting for their own survival and trying to protect their loved ones. And in Vietnamese, we also found a lot of metaphorical expressions denoting the conceptual metaphor. COVID-19 is a war, and Vietnamese people also consider curing COVID-19 as a fighting a battle or fighting a war. As you can see on the screen right now, we can find so many examples of those metaphorical expressions in the highlighted words or phrases. Here are some more examples. Like curing COVID-19 is like fighting a war, and they need to try really hard, use a lot of weapons to fight back the COVID-19, and they can win the COVID-19. You can read some more example on the screen right now. Yes, we can find so many examples in lots of Vietnamese articles during the during like 6 months from January to June in 2021. Vietnamese and also English people also consider coronavirus as an enemy or an invader. And as you can see, the way they use the language to talk about this. For example, like a virus infects our body by entering healthy cells. There, the invader makes copies of its cells and multiplies throughout your body. Or take command, attract those common metaphorical expressions to talk about coronavirus. It feels like it's also the same like the way they talk about the enemy in a battle or in a real world. In Vietnamese, we also found a lot of examples and more evidence to prove that everyone is understanding coronavirus as an invader or an enemy. You can read some more example on the screen right now. Here is the mappings connecting the source domain of war and the target domain of COVID-19. So the source here is the war and the target is the COVID-19. Everyone consider COVID-19 as the enemy, And they also consider the doctors, nurses, patients, government, peoples around the world as soldiers in the battle to COVID-19. And they use vaccine or quarantine as the effective weapons to combat COVID-19. And the battleground here is the human body, and winning a war is curing COVID-19. And if someone die, it means like they lose in the war. It means like they fail in the treatment. All the strategies in the war is considered as strategy of treating a disease or treating COVID-19. So this research is carried out with the hope to partially improve teachers' metaphorical competence. The teachers will be provided a basic understanding of conceptual metaphor theory and detailed analysis about common metaphorical expressions in English and Vietnamese, which helps them have a better insight into these conceptual metaphors. As a result, they can apply the conceptual metaphor theory into teaching and learning process. Well, in the ordinary teaching activities, teachers should cultivate students' metaphorical awareness consciously. They should carry out the job from two aspects. Firstly, they should make students know that metaphors are not only considered to be in literature, but uh, they are part of everyday speech that affects the ways we perceive, think, and act. I mean, they are pervasive in language. And secondly, teachers should instruct students to command the method of metaphors, cultivate their ability to think and learn independently. And in the daily teaching process, they should make the best use of teaching time in the class to foster students' analyze ability when meeting metaphors in textbooks or other extra materials. It is necessary to encourage students to dig deep the underlying conceptual metaphor system based on associated metaphorical expressions. This method helps deepening the understanding of knowledge about Turkish language, therefore promoting the learning of English accordingly. And hopefully, the findings of this study will bring students a number of benefits in their learning process as follows. Firstly, metaphor can aid the development of reading skills. After reading this research, students may have a basis knowledge about conceptual metaphor theory and understand more about the representations of conceptual metaphors in English and in Vietnamese, which facilitates their process of reading other material related to this field, and as a result, benefit their reading comprehension in general. Secondly, thanks to understanding metaphorical expressions in both languages, learners will become more interested in reading original texts or works in English, which creates a great opportunity to broaden their vocabulary source, especially figurative expressions. And working with metaphorical language, learners can understand the making of meaning and sense and can acquire an effective way of learning to improve their language proficiency. And lastly, when students have a solid knowledge of conceptual metaphor theory and a wide range of metaphorical expressions, they will be able to produce metaphors to serve different purposes in life. And translators also can benefit a lot from this research. Cultural differences will lead to differences of conceptual metaphors, different living environments, Geographical locations, world views, and religious beliefs are the main reasons that cause cultural differences of conceptual metaphors. Therefore, the knowledge of conceptual metaphors and cultures is required to achieve an effective translation. Hopefully, the outcome of the study will contribute a small part to have translators to have better insight into the conceptual metaphors denoting COVID-19 and facilitate their translating process. And here are some ideas for further study. So firstly, other study can investigate other conceptual metaphors denoting COVID-19, or they can analyze this conceptual metaphor but using other framework, for example, like the framework of Tammy or Kovacev. Or maybe other researchers can examine other target domains such as emotion, design, morality, thought, society, politics, time, human relationships, and communication. Okay, and here are some references of this study. Some more references in Vietnamese and also in English. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you for your listening.